This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome. Hello, everybody. We're going to allow some folks to fill up the room. Give it a few moments here. In the meantime, I'm going to put in our chat box the link for today's program. And this link will have library news and information, links to reading lists and all sorts of other things, but also links to today's author and conversation person, presenter, their links to their websites and their socials. And then along with that, anything that comes up in today's conversation, which always does, I'll be there tapping in the resources. If we can link back to the library, great, but I will also reach out to other locations. All right, and so let's jump in with today's library news. Thank you all for joining us on a lovely Friday afternoon and for our lunchtime author talk. This is part of our summer stride, which if you are familiar with our library, this has been an ongoing campaign. If you do 20 hours of reading, coming to an event, or learning, exploring, you get your iconic San Francisco Public Library tote bag. So time to go pick that up. I know you've all done your 20 hours. All right. And of course, we want to acknowledge that San Francisco lies in the occupied and unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush and Ohlone peoples, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. We recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. And as uninvited guests, we affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples and wish to pay our respects to the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush community. And right now in the chat, I'm throwing in a reading list that is has tons of resources, a giant reading list, but you'll also find in there specifically Bay Area Indigenous reading list and some great websites that you can explore. And then there's also a map that's called Native Land, which is really great because you can put in your location and it'll tell you what land you are on, and any treaties that were in place or previously in place. It's a really great interactive map. All right, and so coming up over summer, our library celebrates bi-monthly read, where we encourage all of San Francisco to read the same book at the same time. So for July and August, we chose a romance, beach read, sizzle read, bodice ripper. This one is different though, because it also has feminism and family planning. So I love the twists in this book. And author Beverly Jenkins will be in conversation with Rachel Feige, a librarian at our library. And that'll be happening August 23rd at 7 p.m. You can join the book club the day before that, August 22nd, and talk about Wild Rain. All of October, we're celebrating food. We have poets from Nomadic Press doing their third and final summer session, Poets on Food. And we have the vegan powerhouse Miyoko's Creamery talking about the work she has been doing. She is amazing. And we do have James Beard award-winning author Christina Cho, but the date has been postponed, and look for the new date on that. And I'm so excited about this. I know if you're from the Bay Area, you know all about our food co-ops. We love our food co-ops. So we have Arizmendi Bakery, my favorite, and Other Avenues, who has been, they're legendary in San Francisco, and the Deep Grocery Co-op, which is out of Oakland, and Cultivate Community Food Co-op. And so we're going to have a huge panel. This will be in the Cossitt Auditorium, but it will also be streaming, so don't worry. But come on down. The Cossitt is gorgeous. It's a beautiful day. The farmers market is outside that same time. So come on down to the Civic Center. We miss having folks around. And one last announcement. We are so excited for October, November, December, celebrating our largest literary campaign of the year. Well, COVID has really screwed up our years, so I'm saying years. Their 17th One City, One Book is This Is Ear Hustle, Unflinching Stories of Everyday Prison Life, featuring Nigel Poor and Earlonne Woods. And then main event, November 3rd, December, throughout November and December, we have programs that align with the book. It is going to be amazing human fest. So come out for that. All right, without further ado, today you are here to hear from Suzanne Cope and Cleo Silvers. And we're talking about power hungry women of the Black Panther Party and Freedom Summer and their fight to feed a movement. Suzanne Cope is a writing professor at NYU who has been researching and writing about food and politics for years. Her articles have been published in the New York Times, Washington Post, Atlantic, and Travel and Leisure, as well as with the BBC, CNN, Buzzfeed, NPR, and more. She speaks on related topics on radio shows and podcasts and at numerous professional scholarly meetings. And she's in Brooklyn, New York. And then we have the amazing Cleo Silvers, raised in Philadelphia. Her career in community and labor organizing began at VISTA, and that was in the South Bronx. She was a member of the Black Panther Party, later the Young Lords Party. She was recruited by James Forman and the Central Committee into the League of Revolutionary Black Workers, also which became Dodge, Revolutionary Union Movement, DRUM, which became the Black Workers Congress. It goes deep, right? She began her work with BWC on the labor organizing introduction tour of the United States and organized in most of the major working class cities in the country. Today, and I love this part, she's working as a consultant at the Cossitt Library in Memphis, Tennessee. So lots of library love, and what an amazing life. So we are so fortunate to have both of you here, and I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to the both of you now.
Thank you so much for having us, Anise.
Thank you. This is such a pleasure to be here, and so great to talk to Cleo again. Hi, Cleo.
Wonderful, Suzanne.
Great to see you. How's your summer been going?
Very well. I've been ill a couple of times, but other than that, it's going really well. I've been enjoying it.
Good. I'm glad. So we were chatting a few minutes right before, and Cleo had asked me a question. I'll just have you ask me that first question because I think it's a nice way to kick off our conversation, and then we'll dig into some of the topics of the book.
Well, I don't know if this is verbatim what I said before, but I was so interested in what brought you to interest even in writing a book about the Black Panther Party, about food, about the interaction of food and the movement for social justice. It's such a wonderful way to approach life. And I just was so excited and actually very surprised when I heard about this book. So would you talk to us about that just a bit?
Sure. I'll talk a little bit about the genesis of this. So I, in late 2016, I had been writing about food and thinking about food and culture, and food as, food is always political. Most people know or think about it, especially food scholars. And I was really thinking kind of for my own self. I was, so many people were being activated at that time. And, how is food used as a tool for political and social change? I'd been thinking about it more abstractly, but then I saw people feeding protesters and organizing dinners. And I thought, what has happened kind of around the world? I wanted to be personally inspired by these stories. And so I started doing this research into just different movements, different moments in history and kind of modern history in the last, I'd kind of just roughly been, the last 100 years. And I was gathering these interesting stories and reading these firsthand accounts. And I came across Aline Quinn's story, which is the other half of the book. That's not the Black Panther Party of Power Hungry. And it was interesting. She was this footnote in many accounts about the voting rights efforts, the Black independence movement in Mississippi in mostly the early 1960s. And she was a restaurant tavern owner and a single mom and a community leader. And just, I was so taken with her story, but there was, at that point, I couldn't find that much online. And so she was part of this initial book idea that that didn't end up taking off. It was looking more broadly. It was looking at global stories of women, and then I wanted to turn my focus towards American stories and maybe just this period of time. And so I was thinking, what I was kind of afraid that I wouldn't be able to find that much about Ellie, because that's there's been, I think, a number of great books recently that have been highlighting these unsung leaders, mainly women, many women of color who have been left out of history. And, you know, part of their unsungness is that there's just not often a lot about these women. And if they're no longer alive, you know, it's a little unclear about what might be out there in the world. How much can you tell their story and really fill in the blanks? And so I was speaking with my wonderful agent, Monica Woods, and she brought up the Black Panther Party and the Free Breakfast for Children program, which of course I was aware of. And it was a really, you know, aha moment for me when I started even doing a little bit of research, because I think it's the kind of story that so many people have heard of, but they don't know that much about. They think they know more about it than they really do. And as soon as you start doing any sort of critical research, you start to realize that what you thought you knew about this amazing program is not the common narrative. And so I saw that, wow, this is really a story that for someone like myself, an academic who really tries to do this, you know, solid research and think critically about the stories that I think I know, there was so much I didn't know. And particularly what struck me was an early statistic about how women were, you know, as much as 2/3 to 70% of the Black Panther Party membership, that they were leading these programs, that the community programs were so popular and really at the core of what the Panthers did. I was like, wow, why is this story not told? And then as I started to put this book together, I really saw that Ellie's story, not that it's not really the beginning of the Black Panther story, but they have so many parallels, and they do you know, intersect in these really interesting ways. And so this dual narrative came about, and as I dug deeper and deeper, the connections were even more interesting. But before I started doing that really deep research, I was thinking, okay, once I realized there were so many female leaders in the party that weren't, there's a few that many people have probably heard of, whose names are most often out there. But then I was like, can I find someone who is not one of these top 5 names, who maybe would be willing to speak with me? And I came across Cleo's name. And I think when I first read it was in your interview with Alondra Nelson, and I think it was ultimately in her book Body and Soul, but it was it was excerpted in a scholarly article. And so I was able to find you on social media, and I reached out, and you got right back to me. And I remember exactly, I was in my office at school, and we had a phone call, and I remember you just being so wonderful and generous with your time. Like, I'm going to tear up now. And it was just such a great conversation. And I thought, wow, I want to help tell your story and the story of other women like you. So that was really the fall before I really dug into the research of the book. So it was probably fall 2019. And then the first time we met was January 2020. Yeah, so that was great.
Well, thank you. It is an amazing intersection, and I'm so happy that somebody thought of it, that thought of the importance of sharing that with people everywhere, because we don't get an opportunity to really talk about how food is a basis for pretty much everything we do in life. Food and healthcare. Mm-hmm. Those are the 2 main elements of life and society, and keeping us happening. Exactly. On the, yeah. So it's, for me, I just, I'm so amazed and so happy that you decided to do it and show what really life was like for the Black Panther Party and for the civil rights movement. And Miss Aileen, I really appreciate her and all of her hard work and all of her, you know, contributions that she made to the struggle, you know, exactly. And many more women that are unsung in the civil rights movement. You know, we haven't yet opened up
Oh, there's
the
so many stories.
floodgates of wonderful women that have been participants in the civil rights movement. Um,
You know, thinking about food and its power for social and political change, but also how it creates community, and also how I think we have, you know, a concept that's come up in our conversations, but I also, you know, definitely wrote about it in the book, and recently was so excited to speak with Dr. Francois Hamlin about this concept, activist mothering. I think so often women are relegated to the kitchen. They're like, okay, women have to feed people, or people think they want to, or this is what they're good at. I remember early, before I met you, Cleo, I was going to New York City, up in Harlem, a Black Panther Party. I think it was their film festival. And probably right before I reached out and met you, and I was meeting some Yasmin. I remember meeting her, and the women, I was like, would you be willing to maybe speak with me about this book? And I forget if it was Yasmin or someone else who like, you better not be writing a cookbook. Like, they didn't, you know, they were thinking it was just, what were the women cooking for everyone? I was like, no, that's not it at all. And so it's interesting, you know, that you and I have talked so much about food. We've shared meals together, and it's like that. I mean, I want your recipes, you know, like I want the cookbook, but obviously it's so easy just to think it's about sitting down and having dinner together. So it's that juxtaposition of that is really important, to sit down and have dinner together and to have delicious food. And I know you put so much love and care into the food that you make for people and have made for people throughout your life. But, you know, it's about this book, and also what we know it is about so much more than that. I remember I was so lucky to meet you in, right before everything changed in January 2020, and we cooked together, and I can't imagine, you know, having to only meet you over Zoom and not be able to sit around your table and share what we shared multiple times. Do you want to talk a little bit about that idea, about the importance of sitting down and communing over meals?
well, I also want to say that many of the struggles, many of the ideas, and many of the concepts that came out of the struggles came out over a table of people sharing together, from different backgrounds, from different ways of life, from different political positions, people coming together and understanding the basic social and political questions, and the financial questions, economic questions, that bring us together to fight for social justice. And that, and as well as those revolutionaries that sat down over, you know, let's eat and make these final decisions about taking whatever action we're about to take. That, and of course, there's also things like getting together and sitting up so that none of us are late for the free breakfast program, and having a glass of wine or so, just talking and doing political education and sharing information with each other. So much of this took place, you know, and so much of the unity that we were able to establish came as a result of our sitting together over some food. And I want to say the other thing is that, you know, Black Panther women, at least in the Harlem branch where I'm from, didn't do a lot of cooking for the party. And how did we get our food? You know, there was a thing that we did in Harlem, is that we never saw a senior citizen or an elderly person with a package going up to the 5th or 6th floor of a building without taking their package and running it up to the 6th floor for them, or running it up to the 5th floor for them. And as a result, the elderly people, the senior citizens in the community we would end up with a big pot of rice and beans down at the party, because we took some old lady's packages up to the floor where she lived. so many times people in the community who understood that what we were struggling for was their needs, fighting for the community, and they were very positive about the work that we were doing in the community. So we got fed a great deal by the people in the community, and everybody, and as well the resources in the community for participating in our free breakfast program, for having our free breakfast program, came from the community as a result of people recognizing that what we were doing was something that was in their interest, in the interest of all. So we're very, and I want to tell the story of the free breakfast program whenever you're ready.
Oh, that was going to be my next question. I was going to give a touch of background for folks who might not know the history. So the especially West Coasters, right? The first free breakfast program was in Oakland, as most people probably know here. And within a couple months, it just became so incredibly popular. But what I thought was interesting about how I spoke with Curtis Muhammad, who was a SNCC member, and he's no longer with us as of a couple months ago, but what a wonderful man. And he was very active in, I met him through the voting rights research that I was doing. And then he told me this amazing story early in my research that he was called a couple years later by the Black Panther Party, who said, so would you mind, this is called they called the SNCC office, and would you mind coming out to Oakland to maybe, tell us a little bit about how you organize the community, how you figured out what kind of projects to do. And so he said, and this is his story, he said he went out to Oakland, and he told them what Ella Baker told him, and she was a longtime leader in the NAACP and helped found SNCC, and said, go to the people and ask them, what do you want me to do for you? What do you need? And he said, I'm not, is what Curtis said. He's like, I'm not saying I told him to start the breakfast program, but I told them to ask the people what they needed. And this was corroborated that this is what the Panthers did by when I talked to Father Neil, who was the pastor, the priest who was supportive of the Panthers and where they had their first breakfast program. And so they went and, he helped them, and Ruth Beckford, who was one of his parishioners, and the Panthers, and they met with, they asked the people, what can we do for you? And they kept saying, I don't always have food. I'm not, I work nights. I'm not always able to bring my kid to school. And so they came up with this breakfast program, and it started in January of 1969. And it was an immediate success. And so within months they said, okay, all of the branches around the country need to start doing this. And so, yeah, I guess, Cleo, tell us what it is that y'all did.
Well, here in the Harlem branch of the Black Panther Party was kind of the center of the Black Panther Party, where there was a Brooklyn branch and a branch out in Queens. There were two branches. There were a Jamaica branch and another branch in Queens, which they're going to be so upset with me for not remembering.
Corona.
You're on mute, Suzanne.
Oh, I just unmuted. Corona branch.
Corona. Thank you so much. Yaz will be very upset with me. So that there was not just one free breakfast program in the New York City area. So there were about 4. And in fact, the big important one was not in Harlem itself, but was in the South Bronx, where my base was. I was based in the South Bronx, and most of my work that I was assigned to from the Black Panther Party Harlem branch was in the South Bronx. So our free breakfast program was on Intervale Avenue, and the Intervale was community center, and there was one in the Unified Church in the Bronx. So there were 2 programs, and I think I attended both of them. So the point about the free breakfast program is that one of the things that we were able to do is that we didn't have to, or we didn't just have a program and tell people to come. we went to the parents of the children and asked them if the kids could come down to the free breakfast program. So parents knew exactly where their kids were going to get up early and go. We did a couple of other things that were so important, is that we went to pick the kids up to bring them to the free breakfast program. So the food was made available by the leadership, and where it came from the canvassing of community businesses throughout the city and in your area. So you canvass the community and you let people know, well, you're making money off of the community. We're doing a free breakfast program. We need cups, plates, utensils. We need bacon, eggs, grits, orange juice, toast, and whatever else is needed to make a breakfast happen. And we got all of those things, not from any kind of foundations, not from the government. We got everything from the community. And we always say that all the resources you need to do a program that is going to feed the people in the community actually come straight from the community itself. So that was one of the wonderful things about the program. So what does a Black Panther have to do to be in the free breakfast program? You have to commit to a certain number of days that you're going to work in the free breakfast program. And if you say you're going to do it, you had to be there, you had to do it, and you had to show up. So we began at 5 o'clock in the morning. Somebody began cooking right away, immediately when we made it to the place. And we tried to determine what we were going to feed the kids for that day. And the bacon got on. We started setting the table with all the utensils and the plates and cups and napkins that were needed. And we got everything ready. And then each person that had kids, a group of kids to go and pick up, had to run and pick up their kids. And we did that. Parents were very happy to let us have their kids and take them over to the free breakfast program. We got the kids settled and sat down and started feeding them. And the kids were very happy. We fed them some really excellent breakfasts. And the kids were like, yeah, right on, we like this. And they would be partying and dancing during the breakfast. That would be good. And then during breakfast, we asked everybody, okay, who's got homework? And kids really raised their hand, they got homework, we helped them with their homework. And while they were finishing their breakfast, we're like, get your homework out, and then after breakfast is over, we'll work with you on your homework. There was another period of time during breakfast where members of the Black Panther Party, who were experts in Black history, would teach children Black history events. We would teach them about the contributions that Black people made to society, like the egg beater, like the ironing board, like so many of the important things that people used in society that were made by Black people. And important people in the society, important Black people in the society who'd made tremendous contributions. So those were the things that we were doing. And after breakfast, the people that had kids going to school had to rush off and take their kids to school, and the people who were left cleaned up for the next day. And everyone was so meticulous about our work. This is why I say the Black Panther Party was one group of people that I've never met a finer group of people. Everything we did was so meticulous. Every pot was cleaned, every plate was put away. Everything that we used was meticulously cleaned and prepared and set up for the next day. We never had a problem. That we were so organized and so disciplined to do the right thing so we could get things happening. Because right after that, you had to go out and sell your newspapers. And we were pretty much like, I'm going to sell 100. We would compete with each other over how many newspapers you're going to sell and where you're going to go to sell your newspapers. So, I mean, we really cared about getting the information out. Never sold a newspaper up and without explaining to each individual what was inside that newspaper and why they should buy it, which was why our sales were so high. Just everything that we did was so excellent, and our goal was to make positive things happen in the society. I want to say one more thing that the Black Panther Party did that people may or may not understand, that sickle cell anemia and sickle cell disease had never been a diagnosis, a formal diagnosis in medicine in the United States of America. And it's because the struggle of the Black Panther Party and the demand that the NIH, the National Institute of Health, take up sickle cell and sickle cell anemia as diagnoses and as a recognized disease, and do research, not only just take it up and recognize it, but to do research on sickle cell, that it is now such a recognized disease in society. And right on to the Black Panther Party and to our work. I want to take a little bit of credit in that I was a part of that initial group of people who worked on the sickle cell issue. So, as well as going to the free breakfast program and getting up at 5 in the morning, that was so cool. I couldn't do it now, but when you're young, all of these things are possible. You can do so many things. So young people, let's go.
I love it. I know you're an inspiration for so many people. Yeah, I definitely want to circle back to some of these legacy issues and healthcare stuff. But I had another question right before you were talking about that. This is such an interesting theme that came up with, Ellen Quinn and SNCC and the voting rights efforts. And of course, in every major movement, political education. I know how important it was for the Panthers, among the Panthers, and maybe you could speak a little bit to that. But I also know that teaching these kids their history and also not just their history, but like the truth of what is happening, that they are worthy, that food should not be a privilege, but a right. And I know in part it was the political education that you all really had at the core of your message that made you such a target, that had the Panthers, they were considered such a threat to, white supremacist government establishment. Could you speak a little bit to the political education in general, and maybe that idea of why political education is so powerful? Please.
Well, I want to say a couple of things. Political education was the key and at the core center of the work of the Black Panther Party for us to become more politically conscious and aware, and for us to share our awareness and consciousness with the rest of the community. So that was the key to it. That was what we were trying to do. And I have to say, I learned so much during political education class, which was held every day, in which you were expected to participate, to show up and participate in every day if you were a member of the Black Panther chapter. So I showed up every day after work and after selling my newspapers and whatever else assignments I was given from the Black Panther Party. And then before dinner time, we had our political education classes where sometimes fundamental education took place, because many times people from the community, people who wanted to participate as Panthers even, came in and did not know how to read. So there was that level of education going on at the same time, simultaneously, as this really high level of political, dense political reading, some people were as high as Kant, and some people were just learning how to read at the same time. After dinner, then that's when the big guns came out, and the leadership came out with books that they wanted you to participate with reading and sharing information so that you would understand the material that was inside of the Black Panther newspaper. And of course, the Black Panther newspaper was used to educate everyone in the community. And my feeling is that the level of consciousness in the community during that period was quite high. And that people, also I want to say that the Black Panther Party used slogans a great deal. The avaricious businessman and all power to the people were concepts that people understood. They knew who the avaricious businessman was, and that was one of the slogans that was used in the newspaper so many times, And by the way, in order to be a recognized member of the Black Panther Party, you had to be able to recite the 10-point platform and program, the 8 points of attention, the 3 points of discipline, and to do it on demand, so that people knew that you were a member of the Black Panther Party and that you recognized the importance of the program that we were fighting to attain. So
I think too, it's like there's so much education that, man, we could all stand to have more of now. And then it wasn't just that you understood that. I remember speaking with Frankie Malika, and she was saying that she was someone who was both active in the New York Panthers, and she also was a SNCC member in Mississippi. So it was really amazing. And she had, she was so active in Mississippi and then moved to New York to be with her sister, who lived right outside the city, and ended up starting their own breakfast program. But what I remember, she was telling me something where she was used to action. And so she was hanging out with, I think, Amiri Baraka's wife. And she's like, they did a lot of talking and it was great, but I wanted to do things. And the Panthers were doing things. And so I love that you were doing all this thinking and talking and debating and learning, but then you were also doing things. I mean, I'm continually impressed with just how much was happening and how active you were in the community, for sure. But one thing that really strikes me too is that you were modeling this. You were modeling the world that you wanted to see. You were modeling the future that you wanted, with many of these community programs, but specifically with the free breakfast program, you were saying food should not have to cost money. No one in a country as rich as ours, in a society as rich as ours, everyone deserves food. And I remember there was this great quote by Fred Hampton, I don't have in front of me, but that was saying, that maybe I'm going to paraphrase it. He says it, of course, amazingly, that people may not be thinking about socialism or think that they agree with socialism, but once they start agreeing with the concepts of socialism, that food should be free, suddenly they're coming around to this, this belief. Do you think that this was, I don't know if you have anything to say about that, but also if, do you think that this modeling of a non-capitalist society was something that made the Panthers both powerful and also a target?
Absolutely. And I think it continues. Anyone who really wants to change the society and to square and make equality and justice the way that we should live is a target for our government. And I don't understand why. It would make society a lot better. You wouldn't have a lot of crime, because people have the things that they need and the resources that are available to human beings. Then you don't need to have crime. People steal because they need stuff, or that's my understanding of why would you steal if you didn't need to have it. So there's or why would you steal if the society has not told you that you should have it and you don't have it. And yes, we were socialists. And yes, we became, so if we were not socialists, we became socialists in the process of modeling what it meant to to live in a society where we spoke to each other with respect and dignity, where we were learning how to share that with the community and with the kids that were coming up. The kids who came to the free breakfast program, and many of them I've met since over the years, and they learned from us. They learned, they were respectful of how we interacted with each other, you know, and the pride and dignity that we always afforded each other. You know, that's a part of it. You know, what we're fighting for is a society in which we can listen and hear each other, as opposed to closing up our ears and looking askance at each other in the society. So I don't know why we're targets. We should be the darlings of society, as a matter of fact. The people who are leading the struggle for justice and equality should be the darlings of society.
Yeah, for certainly modeling is so important. If my mother's here, she would chime in. Childhood development, they want to do what they see others doing. I just want to comment, I do see some great questions in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end of this hour. You know, and that reminds me of something else you were telling me that I'd love you to speak to. You know, that feeling of belonging, that feeling of when you can feel welcome at a table, your Black and brown cadre, that you would take them out to dinner, and why that was so important for you to take these young men. Or the young men and women, or mostly young men that you would
young
take
men and women? Oh, they were both. I would like to say who the Black and brown cadre was. When you're working in a community, and you're there, you're immersed and you're deep down in the community, and you're working and you're meeting people on a day-to-day basis, and people who are introducing themselves, they walk up to you and go, I know who you are, and I'm introducing myself to you, and I want my high school son to meet you. Or when you walk into a high school and they got a struggle going on, they ask you to come over and speak. And they're high school students that you run into. There's some of them that are just special and want to just get involved in the movement right now. And that's how the Black and brown cadre emerged. The Black and brown cadre were high school students who were not old enough to become members of the Black Panther Party, but who wanted to be. And it was my responsibility and those were from Morris High School and Bronx Science, and 2 or 3 other high schools around the area. And so I just took them in after school, come over, we'll do political education. And we all studied and we all read, we all talked about we would even sometimes use the newspaper, the Black Panther newspaper, as political education for this day. And we're going to go out and sell our newspapers. And I went with them. By the way, I had to go to their parents and ask their parents if it was okay for them to do this. I never took on children without having their parents okay to do so. So I had the kids. We go out, we sell newspapers together. Who sold the most newspapers? And you know, you got a percentage of the papers that you sold, and you gave the other percentage to the party. And I gave the kids their percentage, just like equal to what a Black Panther would get, because we all were doing the same thing, and it was wonderful. And of course, if you come over after school, I'm cooking dinner sometimes if I'm in a position to. And so you get to have dinner at my house too. And then after dinner, there's this wonderful discussion. Zaid Shakur might come over and have political education, evening political education. And here you are, you're a high school student and you have Zaid Shakur coming in, or Michael Tabor coming in, or Fanny Shakur coming over to, give you political education. What an amazing thing. And so many of those students became brilliant members of the community who made tremendous contributions to the community, I want to say that Huracan Flores and his brother Felix Flores were two members of my beautiful Black and Brown cadre, and Huracan was killed in Florida in a struggle with the police, with the FBI, and his brother Felix Flores is still around, floating around. I have no idea what he's doing, but he's a great man. He's whatever he's doing is great. So many of those young students, Panama. I know you've heard of Panama Alba. Panama Alba is one of my students. He had dropped out before I could, but he still is what I consider one of my students. Muntu, the great a lawyer, the great attorney. They're part of that high school team, and they're just amazing people. So Hilda Ortiz, I cannot forget Hilda Ortiz. So there were so many of the Black and Brown cadre were just brilliant young people. Okay, so what else? What we talking about? Political education?
Oh, well, I was going to say, I love that.
You're on mute, Suzanne.
Oh, can you hear me? I am off mute. Did it not off? Okay. Not turn off? I feel like this is lagging a little bit. I love that you said you would take them to the Indian restaurant or out for these meals to help them feel like they knew more about the world and help them and say you belong in these spaces. I was just talking to a friend today who was telling me that, she's a queer person and a person of color. And she was saying, I go to this one restaurant, but I don't always feel welcome. And this is, so many decades later. And I was thinking how important it is to help these young people feel like, yes, this is a space you deserve to be in.
And that we all deserve to share whatever resources there are in society, and particularly things that are cultural. And to we would be a much better place if we could share our cultural things, our music, our food, sharing food from different countries and different walks of life and different worlds, and even different approaches to the same food. I'm in the South, and the approach to African American food, to soul food, is a different thing down here in the South than it is in the North, where I come from. So there's a great deal for us to interact and intersect with.
And any sort of critical thinking has you questioning, why is that? Oh, let's go back to the history. Let's look at migration. I mean, this is why, right? Food is always political and always this great place to start or to continue these kind of conversations, which is so great. I think we were going to leave the last 10 minutes for questions. So the last thing I wanted to maybe have you speak to, if you don't mind, before we get to that, Mark, is a little bit more about healthcare, because I know it was so important to what your lifetime mission was, what you did with the Panthers, and also perhaps relate it to food justice. Of course, eating well is part of healthcare, holistic care, community care.
Yeah, well, food is health, and I'm learning that lesson every day, because in order for me to stay alive, because of my heart, and because I have congestive heart failure, which means my arteries are all clogged up, I have to eat a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables, and it helps me to stay healthy, and it helps everyone to stay healthy, as a matter of fact. So health and food. I was involved in fighting for quality healthcare, but initiated in Lincoln Hospital. And people should learn all about Lincoln Hospital struggle by watching the film Takeover and the film Dope is Death. Takeover by Emma Snyder, and Dope is Death by Mia Donovan. But the struggle for quality healthcare had its center for a long time in the community of the South Bronx, because Lincoln Hospital was such a horrible place. It was recognized as the butcher shop and I don't want to go on and on because I want to answer questions, but check out the struggle for healthcare, and how important it is that we were able to write the first Patients' Bill of Rights based on the real complaints of patients at the hospital, at Lincoln Hospital. We put up a 24-hour complaint table, and not only was it a complaint table, but we actually took up the struggle inside of the hospital for individual patients and for groups of patients, right there. And the struggle against lead poisoning.
That's what I was about to get that. I was basically being like, Cleo, talk about Patients' Bill of Rights. I'm so glad you brought up lead poisoning, which was like not even recognized as being a public health problem. And now there's legislation against it. There's public programs. And I just wanted to kind of end before we get to questions with highlighting that there are so many issues that the Panthers brought light to, that they pushed research towards, that they pushed legislation towards. Of course, the free breakfast programs led towards federal free breakfast programs a couple of years later, and so many other things around these community programs that you worked on. This is the legacy of the Panthers, and it's so little known.
And the last thing I just want to say that the struggle for free, quality healthcare, continuity of healthcare still exists. We should never pay for healthcare delivery ever, because it belongs to human beings, belongs to the people, and we haven't won that struggle yet.
Yeah, there's still many things we're still fighting for.
Yes.
As folks, we'll go back to, I think we had 2 questions here that are already in the chat, but if anyone else has any questions for Cleo or for me, please put them in the chat and I'll go back. One here was, Sharon wrote, I hope you can relate or connect this, or at least mention the farm worker march from Southern California to Sacramento that's happening right now. I'm sorry, I don't know about that. Are you familiar with that? I know the history of supporting farm workers' rights within the party.
Yes, and I'm so happy. I just want to say I'm so happy to get questions from the people who are listening. So please send us questions send us your email address so we can be in contact. I am not aware of the current struggle for workers' rights in the California area. But I have to tell you that historically, the Black Panther Party was always a tremendous supporter and was there for the march. And I've not eaten grapes. I did not eat grapes for many years because of the grape boycott. So it was and I love grapes, but it was a long time before I ate any grapes. But I must say that the Mexican community, the community of farm worker community, is one of the places that I consider to be my people. And whenever there's anything that is going on with them, I support whatever struggle that they're engaged in.
That's what I so appreciate about the Panthers. And I think another maybe misunderstanding or not full understanding is the way that the Panthers were really striving to reach across all these different lines to support support workers around the country, partnering with the Young Lords, which was a Puerto Rican, or would you say Latinx group, Puerto Rican specifically? And then Chicago, of course, Fred Hampton was targeted for trying to bring together working class whites, Latinx people, indigenous rights people. I mean, you have the targeting of the Panthers who were helping to bring together all these disparate groups, because that would be a threat to the power structure, right? And so of course they were always reaching across many aisles to support anyone who needed support, to show that this was, you know, the rights for everybody. Even in that image that was at the very beginning of this talk, which was a photo taken by Bev Grant, who is a friend of both of ours, but has become a friend here in Brooklyn to me. I know, because I've looked at that picture very closely, the kid wearing the beret, I think he has a
young Lord, young Lord buttons on there, yes.
There was another question about what drove you to be, I'm paraphrasing, drove you towards activism, to your lifetime of activism, Cleo.
I must say that I give the credit for my activism to my family. I come from a family where people in the community used to come over to talk politics and listen to good music. So our house was a place where the jazzy people in town who may and may not have been allowed to come over, or the adults came over. We had every magazine, every Ebony, Jet magazine, Crisis magazine, Crusader magazine, every Black newspaper, the Amsterdam News, the Pittsburgh Courier, the Philadelphia, whatever the Philadelphia Black newspaper was at that time. We had them in the house. 1,000 Lynchings was one of the first books that I stole from my father's bed table. You know, and I remember very clearly because he says, "You're too young to read that." And I was like, I had already read it. So I don't know what he was talking about. I had already read it. And everybody was activists, you know, we had a huge garden in the backyard, and people in the neighborhood were just allowed to come and get stuff out of the garden. There was never like, you know, they're stealing stuff. My grandmother would say, "Well, we got plenty, so let them come and get stuff," you know. And she would go out and she'd, you know, bring in her stuff and do her canning. And if somebody came over and they didn't have any food, they'd come over to our house and get food. We had bunches of food canned in the basement where it was cool at, you know, and just, it was always sharing going on. So I come from that kind of background. And the other thing is that we didn't lock our doors back then. We just, you know, and everybody was kind of cousins, second, third, fourth cousins, all that. So that's what I come from. I come from that. I had no idea that the conditions that people lived in were as terrible as the ones that I found when I made it to the South Bronx, because we were working class people. We were poor working class, but we were working class people. And I always had everything that I needed, and more. But yes, I knew immediately that I was going to help people. That was just kind of like who I was. I was kind of in your blood, you know, and you just know that that's what you're going to do, and you start doing it. And being a VISTA volunteer and learning the tools with which to do it were just amazing. I was like, oh, this is the way you do it. I got the tools now. Let me go forth, carry forth.
I love it, Cleo. Well, someone asked if how would they reach out to us for scheduling further book talk. So if you want to put maybe however you don't mind being best contacted in the chat.
Yes,
and I'll give you
my information in the chat,
if that's okay. And I'll give you our last fantastic question in a second. I just wanted to comment on, I love, there's so many threads that you're bringing up, you know, that we didn't have a chance to talk about today. The idea of mutual aid, which was a term I had not heard of until I started doing research into this book. And of course, it's become something that more and more people are aware of. And really, I know in my neighborhood in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, it became even more, there's a mutual aid organization that really did a lot of fundraising and reaching out and did exactly what Cleo was saying. She learned it in her VISTA training, and that was engaged in VISTA, engaged with SNCC, engaged with the Panthers, which is going to the people and saying, how can I help you? And it was so interesting as I was in the middle of my research of seeing some of these threads come up again. And also this idea of community gardens, which I am a co-leader of my local community garden. And last time I saw Cleo a couple months ago, she introduced me to some community garden folks she knows, and she didn't even get to telling you about how she helped create community gardens in the Bronx, right?
Yes, in the Bronx.
And so our last question in our final minute is, what are we having for dinner tonight? Do you know?
What a good question. I think I'm having hors d'oeuvres for dinner tonight. I'm having cauliflower, and I'm going to blanch my cauliflower and put chili powder and curry on it. So that's going to be, and then we're going to dip it in hummus. So I'm going to do that. We've got smoked trout.
Ooh.
I'm going to do smoked trout with cream cheese or creme fraiche on crackers and capers. Probably with caper and onions. What else are we going to do? Salad. And salad. Got to have salad. Got to have green stuff, because yesterday we fell to the wolves and had a hamburger. It's the first hamburger we had all year.
Wow.
We had big ones, Ron says.
I love it.
The first one we had all year with smothered onions, and it was so delicious. So,
I love a good burger. This is most funny. The last time you and I talked on the phone, I was cooking food, and so then we ended up talking about food. Yeah. I'm probably having some version, because we just talked a week or so ago about what I was having that day, because I sent you a picture of it. It is my favorite season. It is tomatoes from the garden season, so we're probably having another caprese. Because I can get most of that out of the garden, and I love the tomatoes are just coming ripe for real. And then we've also our million zucchini. So my kids have been eating it if I saute it, where it gets all caramelized and sweet.
I want some zucchini and yellow squash and summer squash. Oh, I would love to. I think I'll ask my husband to go get it soon.
It's my favorite. Do you have any good, we have to wrap it up, but do you have any good farmers markets near you or farm stands?
We have one really good one, but I haven't been over there this year, as a matter of fact. They have strange hours.
I just have whatever's in the community garden, which is great. And I won't complain about that, but yeah. Well, thank you all so much. Cleo, I love chatting with you. It's been so great.
Thank you so much. And thank you for listening, people. Let's do stuff. That's where I'm at. I want to do stuff with you. And I love you, Anissa, because, you did this, but also, you guys are so progressive in San Francisco. Can I come live with you?
Yeah, come on.
I love San Francisco. It's a great place to be.
Thanks for having us.
We are very lucky here. Yes, indeed. We have. I work right across the street from a farmer's market that operates 2 days a week. I fed my baby from that place, and they same farmers that have been there 17 years ago that are there today. And they all took a hit during COVID, but everything's coming back to life. So, Cleo, you are welcome anytime you have a place. Anytime.
Thank you. And look at your beautiful plants. They're lovely.
Thank you. And oh my gosh, was I right? Library community, what an amazing two humans. So thank you so much, and stick around, because all of August is all about food. And I'm just going to put this link in here one more time. This is the link to the doc. It has as much as I could keep up with. It has Cleo and Suzanne's emails, like they put in there. But all of the resources, which we're flying, like I said, it always happens. found some great archives of the Black Panther newspaper that's listed in there. So thank you very much, Cleo Silvers, Suzanne Cope. Get the book at the library or from your independent bookstore, and we'll hope to have you both back very soon.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.